So today I'm going to show you guys how I installed this water pressure pump, pump controller, filtration system and UV sterilizer into the rainwater harvesting system that we've got here. The video is going to include a whole lot of tips and tricks and detailed information about each part of the installation of the system. And after you've watched the entire video, you guys should be able to confidently install the same system wherever you want. The loose plan is to also talk about exactly why the system is arranged like it is and some design considerations that you guys might want to take into account when designing your own system at home. So with that said, let's get started. So just before we get to installing all of these new components, a quick look at our existing setup. So we've got three 10,000 litre tanks, obviously one next to me here. There's another two down there. Those back two feed in from the right hand side or your left hand side, and then this one feeds in from well, it'll be from your right hand side, and then they both feed, or all three of them feed into our pressure pump over here at the bottom. The pump feeds into a controller which turns the pump on and off as and when we need water, and then out of the controller flows through a disc filter. I think this is 20 microns, could be 200, I can't actually remember. I've only looked at it maybe twice before, and after the filter then it goes down and into the house. So one more thing I want to mention before we take this existing setup apart, and that's about the inlet size piping for our pump. Currently the inlet size piping is 22mm polycopper, basically plastic pipe, but it's 22 millimeters. In my opinion, this is too small for the inlet of the pump. An inlet of the pump is 1 inch or 25 millimeters, so we want at least that size piping coming in, 25 or 1 inch or bigger. In fact, we are actually going to install eventually 40 millimeter. We want as little flow restriction as possible, and we also want as little turbulence as possible coming into the pump. So that's just something to keep in mind for any of your guys' future installations. The loose plan is to get the new controller mounted. Now this is the new controller here. It's a made by Davey. It's called a RainBank. It's got an inlet for our normal supply, then it's got an inlet on the bottom for the tank supply, and then an outlet to the house. That's why I'm keen to actually use this, but I think what we're going to do is try and install it like that. On the wall there's a mounting bracket that I made up here, obviously a custom bracket, as is a lot of the things that I make. It's quite custom. So we'll mount that onto the wall and we'll have it going into our pump. So I think the initial part of the plan here is to get this entire bottom assembly together first and screw it together so that we know the distances between the fittings aren't going to change, because I've got a coupling, a quick coupling, and that has got to be not super precise, but it's got to be fairly accurate so that the O-ring seals and seats nicely once you screw everything together. So I'm going to start off with some PTFE tape. Now technically I suppose you don't really need this around this fitting specifically, because it's got an O-ring seal over here, but we'll just put some on for good measure. I don't think it'll hurt or do anything. And we can screw this on. Now this is a brass fitting onto plastic, so you do have to be a little bit careful that it starts going on straight. Now that's exactly what I'm having a problem with here. I mean, it's super easy to get it going on skew, and then the brass just cuts the plastic thread to pieces, and then your fitting is pretty much trash. But anyway, there it's on, and we'll just tighten this up. Where's my water pump pliers? I wonder if this is going to work. It should work. Again, remember this is only plastic, so it doesn't have to be super tight. Just nipped up a little bit, and that's going to be good enough. Now, I'm not sure exactly what you guys get wherever in the world that you're watching this, but I find it quite easy. Now, I've done a whole lot of these water tank installations, but the PTFE tape that everybody knows is this narrow one for doing, like, you know, copper plumbing or the small scale plumbing, but then you get these much wider PTFE tapes, a lot thicker, a lot wider. Makes the job quite a bit quicker to do, less winding, and I find it works well, especially on these bigger threads. Okay, so when you've got these filters, now this is not a disc filter, I think this is a screen filter. Oh, I could maybe take it apart. I'll take it apart later and show you, but there's a screen inside here. But these things have got directions of flow. Now there's a little arrow and it's actually pointing that way. So we need to install it so that we are going, no, sorry, this way. So that we're going from the pressure pump through the filter in the direction of the arrow and then into the controller. So what I probably should have done, you can see I've already made a little area. This should have been turned on to our elbow here before we put the elbow onto the pressure fitting. So there's no way around this. The only thing to do is actually to take it apart and redo it. Actually, maybe there's a way around it. Let's just see here. Nope. Oh, actually, come now, Grant, let's not be silly, man. If you take it apart, there we can see the screen filter. I think this is 190 microns. There we go. That's almost a apprentice area there. So there we go, that should be fine. Actually, let's go one more turn. Again, just hand tight with these fittings, guys. Remember that they're only plastic. They do seal, especially with the thread tape, so you don't have to torque them to like 100 Newton meters. Just hand tight is fine. And if it's leaking a little bit, you just hand tighten it just a little bit more. So anyway, let's just pop this whole lot back in here now. So in order to mount our pump controller onto the wall in the correct position, because this piping is so long and it's somewhat rigid, I've roughly mocked everything up together. So these are quick disconnects. So there we go. You can see the pump controller is separate. So there's one there and there's one over here. So just screwed everything together. Now all this stuff is properly put together. All of this stuff is properly put together, and then mocked everything up with the pump to get a specific point on the wall where we're going to mount the bracket. So doing this accurately is going to help definitely in the future, because if you mount it skew, let's say we mount it off to the side or a little bit high, then these quick disconnects don't seal properly, or even if they do, you've got to tighten them up really tight, and it's plastic, and then you've got this continuous pressure on the plastic, which over time can eventually give up, and it could even cause leaks. So it's best to take a little bit of time to mock everything up in the beginning. It does take a little bit of extra time, but it's worth it in the end. Okay, I think we need to drill some holes. What? Oh, load shedding. Drilling into hollow bricks. Lekker. Hopefully the nailing anchors are, hey, bitch, that's hot. Hopefully the nailing anchors are gonna hold. What I've got here, this is the bracket that I made, and I prefer to use stainless steel nailing anchors. I mean, they don't cost that much more than the normal mild steel, or they're not mild steel, they're actually quite hard, but the electroplated anchors, I think it's definitely worth using. I mean, when I install tanks and pumps at other people's houses, I'll always use stainless steel hardware. It's just worth it, especially when it comes to maintenance and longevity of your workmanship. For the small extra cost, definitely worth it. Let's get this controller on. Might be a little bit tricky trying to get the screws in the bottom, but I'm sure we'll get it right. Being stainless steel screws, they don't stick to the magnetic screwdriver. So, yeah. I'm going to try and balance it on there. Yeah, that's not going to work. Basically just screwing everything together again loosely, just to check where the mounting holes for the pump are going to go. All of this extra effort that's going in here definitely goes to, well, goes towards a better product in the end, really. So now that all of this lower stuff is complete, we need to install the two sets of filters, so one set over here and the one set down over there to the right. So I've roughly marked out where I want them to be, and I've taken the two caps, the filter caps. Now the big blue filter goes down underneath here, screwed them all together, put the two brackets on, and we're basically going to put them on the wall, push them flush, and then mark all the holes, obviously pull it off, drill the holes, and then use nailing anchors, stainless steel once again, to put them back on the wall. Once that's done, then we know this lower stuff is not going to move, we know the filters are not going to move, and then we can put in the remainder of the piping. So I'm just using a level here to make sure that the filters are, once they're mounted onto the wall, they are nice and level. I mean, we don't want them, oh shit, it just moved. But we don't want them hanging skew, you know, it really looks untidy. And that's poor workmanship, so we'll take our time, use the level. There we go, we've got our 8 marks. Yeah, now to get drilling again. I just realized in that previous clip, you couldn't see what was going on in the bottom here. So this is what I was talking about, where all of the stuff at the bottom is now installed and ready, and then we can continue with the filters. Now, here's another top tip. We're going to be drilling into brickwork here that makes a lot of dust. So I'm going to cover all the stuff with an old towel, but especially if you're doing this at somebody else's house, this is all brand new stuff. You don't want to install all of this and claim that your workmanship is really good, and then you go and drill all these holes and everything gets full of brick dust, and you try and brush it off, and then it just never looks as nice as if you had just covered it up in the first place. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. And how do I know this? Well, let's just say I've learned the hard way. Not only once. So take it from me, it's again definitely worthwhile putting in the little bit of extra effort. Something just to mention quickly, before you go and drilling into your walls, into your brickwork, I can see there's no pipes in my bricks. Here's all the external water pipes here. But if your pipework is chased into the wall, especially when you're drilling inside a house, then just stand back, have a look at where you think the piping might be, and if you can see, well, it doesn't look like the piping is anywhere near here, also, consider that, and that's likely going to be fine. But if you say you got a tap directly underneath where you're drilling, or above, or somewhere in the area, just stand back and have a look. The last thing you want to do is drill into the hole, drill into a piece of pipe. Then you've got a major leak and you actually have to break out some of the wall. This also applies to electrical work. If you've got an electrical point underneath or above where you're drilling, or maybe directly adjacent, so horizontally adjacent, again, just step back, take an educated guess. If you're not sure, check with somebody first. You really don't want to be drilling into electrical work, and look, your circuit breakers and protection built in them should trip the breakers, but you never know what happens, and then do something stupid and you get electrocuted. So also just keep that in mind. So again, yeah, I'm using stainless steel nailing anchors. Since everything else is stainless steel, the brackets are also stainless steel. The screws going into the top of the filter housings are stainless steel. So might as well match everything. This one's not going in all the way. Oh, how I've seen this before, and it really, really irritates me. So we've already got one that's, all of these others are going in flush. This one is sort of standing proud, about 10 millimeters. The hole's not drilled deep enough. And you know what people do? They just smash it in, bend over the end of the screw or the nailing anchor. And then if you need to take it out at a later stage, again, it makes it really that much more difficult. And it just looks like poor workmanship. So, guys, it's definitely not worth taking the easy way out. I'm just checking these others to see that they all go in. So yeah, it's basically just this this top one. Just going to pull that out quickly and grab the drill once again, and we'll just tease it hole a little bit deeper. Oh. I think it was just getting stuck. Was? Oh man. There we go. Yeah. Roll. Yep, that's not going anywhere, as old John would say. Now I can go ahead and snug these top screws down. Previously I actually left them loose so that when we put everything against the wall, the brackets all straighten up and go flush against the wall. There we go. Lekker, man, lekker. Another handy little hint here when it comes to putting these types of things together. So we've got a brass fitting because we're going to put brass, copper piping. Now we're using a female brass fitting, and that is going to go onto a plastic pipe nipple. So basically we've got the brass fitting here, the female side, that the brass goes over the male thread. It works a lot better this way than by trying to get like a fitting like this, but that's got a male thread on this side, and then you thread the male section into here. I found by doing that, if you're going like directly into the filter housing, it's not so bad, but generally the male threads are quite short, and so are these female threads, and it just works a whole lot better leaks wise, and like sort of for the strength of the fitting if you have the brass going over a plastic fitting. And then also just remember to thread on a lot of thread tape, because you can only tighten this basically hand tight, or just a little bit more tight than hand tight. And then again, because it's brass going onto plastic, be careful when you make the first threads going on that it doesn't start cross threading, because the brass will cut this plastic up for nothing. So just take your time. Feels like I've got it first time. It doesn't always happen, but that's going to go on there. And then you can see I already put thread tape, or PTFE tape, Teflon tape if you will, on both sides of the nipple before actually putting it on. It just makes the job a little bit easier. So there we go. I've got the plastic part here hand tightened into the plastic fitting, and that's fine. Now to tighten this brass bit, we're going to hold the nipple, the pipe nipple, and then we're going to tighten the brass just a little bit more. So I'll go ahead and just grab it there. Again, not too tight because this is brass onto plastic. And there we go. That should be tight enough. So not a problem. I mean, that's not likely going to leak, but if it does end up leaking, rather have it too loose than too tight, and then you can just come back here and nip it up again, and then the leak should stop. And then if it doesn't stop, we'll take it off, put some more thread tape on, and then put the brass fitting back on, rather than making it too tight and you actually strip the thread and then you bug it. So hope that helps you guys out. So another tip, just in case I forget to tell you guys when I'm doing it, but of course when we put our copper pipe on here, this is a compression fitting, make sure that you hold this side, the far end of the brass fitting when you're tightening the compression nut, because it is very easy to make the mistake and tighten the compression nut and to compress the little ferrule that's on there, and then this whole assembly starts turning, and it just needs to turn a little bit before it strips the plastic threads out. So very, very important, hold the outer end of the brass fitting when you're tightening this nut. Remember for later, Grant. How do I know? Because I've made the mistake more than once. Yeah, it's all these little things that you learn, on the job, I suppose. Cool, so here at the pump controller, we've got to put on our brass fitting. Of course, I've put on some thread tape here again, strictly not necessary because we've got an O-ring seal around there, but thread tape should just make the brass thread on just a little bit easier. Haven't put a lot on. And then we've got to put our compression coupling onto our brass coupling and then continue the pipe up to the piece that we've just done. So let's get going. Again, I'm just being really careful not to cross thread the plastic on this controller. I mean, once it's on, we shouldn't, there we go, we shouldn't have to take it off. And it's really nice and smooth with that thread tape on there. Again, just hand tight against the O-ring is going to be good enough. Well, not good enough, it'll be good. And then we can put our thread tape onto the brass side here, the male side. Of course, we're not going to overdo it. I mean, remember, if any of this does leak, you can just take it apart, unthread it, remove the old tape, put some new tape on, and just put a little bit more on, and then put it back on. So it's not the end of the world. And so what I've done is I've wrapped a couple of sort of wraps around the front section, and now I'm going to start stacking it up towards the end here, so that it's once that fitting screws on, it like kind of bunches up against the thread tape. And that's just kind of a little hack that I've learned by doing this a couple of times, and it works quite well. So don't get caught out if you want to put on a lot of thread tape. Often what happens is you'll put on a lot, and if you put on a lot where the thread starts, then you battle to get the thread to start on the fitting. So that's why I put just a little bit in the beginning and then a lot here at the end. And this now should, come on, should thread on pretty easily. There we go, it's starting to thread on. Again, important, very, very important. Hold this part of the fitting while you're tightening this adapter. Shifter's not big enough. I'll have to use the bigger one, yeah. There we go. Ooh, it's not feeling good, actually. So this is a good example. I think it went on properly. Yeah, it did go on properly, but I think we've got a little bit too much tape on here. So very easy to get caught out like that, where it starts, but then it got tight almost immediately, just stop, take the fitting off, take the tape off, and try again. The last thing you want to do is cross thread brass fittings, and they don't cross thread as easily as plastic, but when they do, it's an expensive exercise. I mean, the price of brass and copper these days, yes, it's actually quite scary. So let's just check again. Is this? Yeah, it's threading on very easily. So let's just try that once more. A little bit easier with the thread tape this time, Granty. Okay, let's try that. Okay, I think that's it. It should be good. Okay, I've got our other copper pieces cut here. So we've got the elbow on the top, which that's going to go in over there. We've got this short piece which will go into our RainBank or our controller. Sure, it looks like I've cut it a little bit too short. Oh no, there we go. Oh, that's fine. And I'm putting a T on here, and then this is going to go down to a valve. Now the reason I've done this is because this is going to go out, so when we need to wash a car or when we need unfiltered water basically, then we can just put a fitting on the bottom with a lever valve, something like that is down here, and then we connect a hose pipe, we open that, and then it gives us unfiltered water out the system. I mean, there's no need, if you watering the grass or doing something like that, you don't have to filter and sterilize the water before you put it on the grass. Cool, I've just snugged all of these fittings up. Now going to just hold them with the water pump pliers here and give them a final tweak. That should be good enough. Again, you don't have to be stupid tight, just tight enough, because if they leak, well, then you just come and nip it up again at a later stage. There we go. I like it so far. So now that the first bit of the filter system is set up, we need to install our UV lamp. So this is for sterilization of the water. What we're going to do, this is the loose plan, I think I'm going to put it down here. So we've got our water coming into the two filters here. These are going to be our sediment filters, and then it'll go straight down here into the UV lamp and then across, and then it'll travel back up to another two set of filters we'll install in this area over here. Now there's a good reason why I'm installing it lower down with these fittings pointing straight back up. I'll let you know about that later on in the video. But yeah, I reckon if we just have a pipe straight down, that'll be quite neat. I'm also going to have to stand the tube, this UV light, off the wall a little bit so that it's nice and parallel with the pipe coming out of our filters. And I've got these little sort of rubber brackets, they split brackets, so when it comes to mounting them on the wall, of course we'll mount them, and at a later stage, if there is the need to take this off, you just take the two screws off, one on the top, one on the bottom, the cap comes off, and then the filter housing is completely loose. There's no pulling or clipping or plastic that's potentially going to break after a few years in the sun. Of course, this is not stainless steel, so maybe we actually need to, at a later stage, go and paint this and coat it with something, but it is galvanized brackets with a nice rubber mounting, so there's no actual physical connection between the stainless steel and the and the mild steel, the other galvanizing, so there won't be any galvanic reaction or anything like that. So I reckon that's the loose plan. We'll get this mounted first and then move on to the rest of the filter system. So the mounting plan here is that I'm going to use these concrete anchors. Now I could be using raw bolts, but I don't have any. This is exactly what I've got on hand. So hopefully it's going to work. And basically we should just be able to tap that into the hole. Okay, now basically what we need to do is just nip up this nut. Hopefully, well, maybe I should go get a socket. There we go, it's coming loose. So we're going to now pull the center of this concrete stud through and out the wall, so that we've got a piece of, what are these? I think 10 mil. This must be a 10 mil bolt, and then the bracket has got a 10 mil thread on it. Then we'll just thread the bracket onto the piece of bolt that is sticking out. So here is the split bracket, and on the bottom here it's got 12 millimeter female thread. So if we can just turn, and then this is the loose plan, if we just turn this on here, just like that, and it should bottom out, which it's busy doing at the moment. Tighten that up, and basically just get it nice and vertical. And there we go. That's on. It's not going anywhere, not going to come off. And then we can pop our tube in at a later stage and then buckle it down. If we do ever need to get these off and replace them, of course we just unscrew it. Just as simple as that. Just have a quick look at how level this thing is. Hopefully it is level. So we've got it along the top there. Can you see the bubble? Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. It's between the two lines. I think we might have a bum ring. Hey, did it just push on skew, or what is the story here? Okay, that's fitting a bit better. Not sure what the problem was there. Maybe the ring was just a little bit damaged or something from, I don't know from where, but anyway, I think that'll be fine. Okay, that looks good. Now for the other side. Just another little quick tip here when screwing these filter heads together. You must take note that it's got an in and an out. So of course if we start in the in and this one goes out over here, the out over here must go into an in over there and then an out to the rest of your system. Something quite small, and it might seem silly, but it's quite easy to overlook if you've never done that before. Nearly made a rookie error again. Well, at least I started making a rookie error. Luckily, this is stainless steel, not plastic, so the brick dust tends to brush off of it actually fairly easily. A good thing I caught it now. What are the chances of the dust going down there? Yeah, probably pretty good. Let me get another towel quick. Okay. Just chuck this over here, you know, while we are keeping things clean. Some of you are probably laughing, but it's okay. It's not a problem. So we've got this far, and here's where things are going to take a little bit of a turn. I've got you standing far back there so you can pretty much see the whole setup that we've got at the moment. If you can't see it properly, just, you know, put on your far lookers there and bring your face balls in a bit closer. But I've only got one more piece of copper and I'm short of a couple of fittings. So what we're going to do is, now I had some MLP or PEX pipe, multi-layer pipe in the garage. So I think we're going to do a temporary type of setup here where after our filters it's basically going to feed down into the main line, into the house at the bottom there. So I don't know if you can actually see it from where you are, but it'll tee in to the bottom. Where did I get that T from? Because I'm short of one. Well, I robbed it from this corner over here. If you remember, we used to have a T and a little valve. I'm not sure if you can see it there, it's lying there. So I've removed that, put an old elbow onto there so that we've got a spare T for down here. So we'll connect that T up, and then we'll also do one more thing. We'll take this T, now I'm not sure if you can also see it over there, that T, we're going to take that out and extend this piece of pipe, and we're going to extend it down here, and then that's going to actually tee up and go into our setup. If this is all like seeming a little bit confusing, maybe I'm not explaining it too well, just stick around. Once it's all connected up, we'll stand back and then I'll explain what I mean. You'll see it actually does make sense. Yeah, so let's get going with some temporary connections. Lekker. Love doing work twice. This is the quartz tube that we're going to install now in the UV sterilizer. The key thing here is you don't want to be touching it with your bare hands, so definitely a pair of gloves and a lint-free cloth. I've given it a wipe down with some rubbing alcohol. That's according to the instructions. And now we're going to put it in the tube, or into the stainless steel tube, should I say. Also installed an O-ring according to these instructions, 12 millimeters from the open side. Yours may differ, but it's probably going to be something very similar. Let's see if I can get this to now line up, and there we go. I don't know if you can see it out your side there. Let's see, it should just be sticking out. Yeah, there we go, sticking out quite nicely. No, looks like it's sticking out a little bit too far actually. It's quite important to get this thing set accurately, because when you turn on the ends where the O-ring seals go, if it's sticking out a little bit too far on either side, you can actually turn it in, tighten up the aluminium sort of cap that goes in the end and break the quartz tube. So you've got to be quite careful. The closed end of the quartz tube is over here, it's sticking out over there. Now what can happen, well, what we're supposed to do is put this little O-ring on here, and then we screw the end cap on, and then the end cap seals, well, the end cap seals between the O-ring and the body of, you know, this stainless steel housing. But if this quartz tube here, this closed end, is sticking out too far, you're going to put your O-ring, well, you're going to put the O-ring on there, and you're going to turn this end cap on, and what will end up happening is the glass part, or the dome of the glass tube, the quartz tube, will end up pushing on the inside here, and not too much of a problem if you haven't tightened up that side. So as you turn it, it'll just push the tube in, but towards the end, when this O-ring starts tightening up, it starts getting squeezed between the O-ring and this outer cap, and here with the threads, because there's a tapered section, and then it actually starts forcing and putting pressure against the glass tube or the quartz tube, and that's not what you want. Especially in here, the way this thing is turned, there's actually a little nib as part of the machining process still there. So I mean, effectively what we should actually go and do is just file that out, but I think we'll be okay today because I've set this up correctly. But that's effectively just a sharp little point, and as you tighten, that sharp little point is going to come in and then put a lot of pressure on this quartz tube, and then you just need whatever amount of pressure that it needs, and it can actually shatter the tube. So yeah, another way to also just check is to pop the end cap on without the O-ring. Let's just see what happens here. So we should be able to pretty much go in all the way, and I can feel that it hasn't been pushing against anything. So I think we should be pretty good there. Now of course, when you do this, when you screw this in on the other side, don't have that side screwed in and tight, because if you do screw this on, you want it, if the end of the quartz tube is going to hit on the inside, you want it to be to slide and push out. But I think we should be good. So let's pop this. Well, I'm trying to hold both sides at once here, basically. I know you guys can't see what's going on. I'm just taking off the open end, the little cap there, to hold the tube on my side, or on the far side, so that we can slide this O-ring over, just like that. Okay, and now the O-ring will create a seal. Okay, there we go, just hand tight should do. And let's move over to the other side. Here's the quartz tube, and our O-ring is on the end of the quartz tube here, and we've got our open-ended cap, so that's going to screw on. Well, let me screw it on now. I'm just trying to stand out of your way, because everything is quite tight in this area that I'm working, so hopefully you guys can see what's happening. Come on, but there we go. So we're screwing that open end on. Now what's going to happen is, once this is screwed tight, now just hand tight is good enough, not like all the torques, just hand tight is good. Remember, this is glass and an O-ring seal, so it's quite fragile. Now we're going to slide the UV tube, the long UV tube, all the way inside the glass or the quartz tube. But what you can do now, guys, you're not really going to be able to see this, but if you look down inside here, you'll see that this sort of open end cap has got a lip. It's got like a step down inside there, and then you can see the edge of the quartz tube. So because I can actually see the open edge of the quartz tube, and I can see that it's not pressing up against the end of this aluminium cap, I know, and because we've tightened it up here, I know that it's actually compressing that O-ring, and there's no pressure on the glass or on the quartz, so we're pretty safe there. And this is This is why I'm saying it's quite important to just take your time here. You don't want to stick the tube too far that way or too far this way. You're tightening it up, and then you're tightening the quartz against the aluminium, and you're putting it under like a bit of stress. That's really not what you want to do. So let's go grab that UV tube and we'll slide it in. Here's our UV tube. It's in this cardboard sort of protective casing, and then we've also got the ballast. You can see it there. And here's the end. So this end is going to be connected onto the end of the UV tube itself. I just slide it out the bottom, and we can see there's 4 pins. So what I'm going to do, hopefully you guys can see this. It's really tight when I'm working here. But basically we're going to take our connector, we're going to connect it onto the pins, we're going to push it all the way flush like that. Well, at least that's what the instructions say. And then we're going to take the UV tube out, and what I'm going to do is just there we go. Okay, and you can see we've got the end of our tube down there. We've also got this little like support ring, and what is on here? There's a little bit of actually I think it's the mercury inside the tube. We're just going to stick it in now. Now again, I'm wearing rubber gloves. Don't touch this with your bare hands. You don't want oil from your skin getting on these bulbs. So let's just slide that in. I'll just slide it in just easily like that. Take your time, don't force anything. Don't force it this time. I know you guys like to sometimes. There we go, we'll slide the whole lot in. So there, I'll just pull it out again. So there's the end of our UV tube. I'll just slide it in like that. Okay, now it's all the way home basically. And then we've got this, what do you call it? Not a grommet, I don't know. Hey, I've just gone blank now for some flippin' reason. It's not a grommet, man. Gland, this gland in. So we just put that in, just hand tight. It's got a little rubber seal around there. Okay, so I'm just going to grab hold of this inner nut here, make sure the nut is tightened up somewhat, just like that. And then we can take our gland end and we just hand tight. Hand tight is fine on things like this. There we go, finger tight. If you don't have strong fingers, you can just grab it with maybe a spanner or a pair of pliers or something, and then just make it tight so that it's firm and no water is going to go in there. And that's the tube installed. Huh? No power. Why? Just remembered. I disconnected the float switch. Damn it. No wonder it's not working, man. I need to just reconnect that quickly. Okay, float switch is connected. There we go, pump turns on. Great. I think these things should be filling now. The filter housings, they don't have elements in them yet, or filters in them, it's just the housings. I'm going to fill it to check for any leaks in the system. And we'll just run it for a few minutes. And then if everything's going well, turn it all off quickly, and then of course we can put the various filters in, put it back together, and then go test it properly in the house over a day or two. I think that's it. Everything's pressured up. Yeah, you can see spraying water, so all the air's out of that one, and yeah, it looks like all the air's out of this one as well. Cool. Let's just manual override the pump quickly again. Yeah, it looks good. And then just open the main supply coming in. So we should be good to go. Hopefully there's no leaks. Well, I see there's a leak here already. Yeah, it's that top one, it's not this one. Okay, let me sort that out quickly. Yeah, all the other ones seem pretty good for now. On this side, that's good. Those look good, that looks good. All of those down there look good, look good. And that is 128 gigs of video, and the memory card is now full. Damn it. So the last thing you saw is me installing the last two filter elements in these blue filter housings, and that's all I was doing. I did go ahead, however, and finish up installing these waterproof or water resistant outdoor electrical boxes, and that's where the pump controller and the UV sterilizer ballast and the plug plugs into. So we've got our water coming in from our storage tanks, one on that side, one on that side, and it travels up and then into our pressure pump. From the pressure pump, it goes through an isolating valve and then into a strainer. Once it's traveled through the strainer, it goes into the pump controller and then travels up this copper pipe to the rest of the system. And that is, it travels into the first stage of filtration. There's two filters here. After those two filters, it travels down through our UV sterilizer and then out the other end up into our second stage of filtration. After that filtration, it goes out and down and then into the main house. This white pipe comes from the last stage of our filters, and as I mentioned before, it takes a turn and flows into the house. We've also got our main water line coming in at the bottom, teeing up and then flowing into our pump controller. Now this pump controller has got a feature where it prioritizes the water from our pump or from our rainwater harvested water, and it pumps that into the house. If there's something that goes wrong with the pump, or if there's no electricity for the pump to work, then it automatically changes over through a series of isolating and backflow prevention valves. It changes over to our main line coming in, and then that flows through our filtration system so that we've still got continued water in the house. So how come the pump controller is mounted separate to our pressure pump? Why is there a strainer mounted in line? Why are there so many isolating valves everywhere? How come I used such large diameter piping between all of the tanks? Why does it look like there's such a complicated pipe setup here at the bottom? Why are the filters and the UV sterilizer arranged in the way that they are arranged? How come I used copper pipe instead of cheap alternatives like multi-layer pipe? Why did I install the electrical boxes the way I did? And so many more questions. I'm going to answer all of those questions and explain this entire setup in detail. And after watching that video, you guys should be able to design the system specific to your needs. I was going to do that in this video, but as you can see, the video is getting quite long and there's a lot of information to cover. So I'm going to do it in the next video, which you guys can see over here. I'll also leave links in the description, so go and check those out and go and watch this video. I think you're going to find it really useful. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. You'll see me in the next video. Cheers.